Hi, I'm Oisín McGann. I'm a writer and illustrator, and I want to talk to you about my book, A Short Hopeful Guide to Climate Change, published by Little Island in association with Friends of the Earth Ireland. I wrote this book with the aim of trying to make the topic of climate change as relatable as possible. I think it's a fascinating, really interesting subject, but it can be very hard to get your head around, and it can often feel very distant or theoretical, particularly for kids. And we do tend to think of the environment as something that's out there. You know, it's to do with the forests and trees and grass and rivers. We don't tend to think of it as something that's intimate, but actually our relationship with our environment is the most intimate relationship we'll ever have. If you think about the fact that I'm standing here and I am immersed in air the same way a fish would be immersed in water, I'm breathing it into my body, it's pressing against my skin, and I love the air. I love the air more than I love my mother. I can go more than 3 minutes without my mother. Everything we do connects us to our environment. So not only do we need to be able to breathe it, but also it has to stay around the right temperature, because we can only survive within a narrow range of temperature. So if I was to take my temperature, say with a thermometer, this is the one we have in the house. It's the type you stick in your ear. There are lots of different types of thermometer, including one you stick up your bum, which apparently is the most accurate. Who knew? If I took my temperature, I would hope that it's about 98 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's up higher than that, if it's 103 degrees or higher, or if it's down low, say 95 degrees or lower, that could be a sign that I'm ill. It could be a sign that the environment is too hot or too cold. But it could mean that I am facing a medical emergency. Just those few degrees in the difference can be a huge change. So when we talk about the Earth changing by only a few degrees, that can make a big difference too. And we do tend to think when we look up at our atmosphere that there's loads of it, there's just, there's so much air above us. But actually most of our breathable air only goes up about 5 miles. If you were to climb a really high mountain and you were going up above that height, then you would have to take oxygen with you. And to put it all in perspective, this is a globe we have at home. It's broken. As you can see, there's a hole in the bottom where the stand was. And I've marked Ireland, where I'm from. It's tiny, as you can see. There's a red circle around it. Now, the International Space Station flies at a height of about 250 miles above the Earth. It's a little less than the full length of Ireland, right? So there's Ireland there. Now, if I was to show you how high that is on the globe, that's about there. That's where the space station is, okay? And it's in space. So our atmosphere is already gone by the time you get up to that height. If you're talking about our breathable amount of atmosphere, the atmosphere that's thick enough for us to breathe, you're talking about something that's about as thick as that piece of plastic wrapped around the globe. That all the life that has ever existed on Earth has existed within this really, really thin layer wrapped around this ball of rock we call home. Now, we need the atmosphere to be able to breathe, and we need the right temperature to live within, but also the Earth as a whole needs temperature to stay within certain limits. And when the sun shines on the Earth, if the Earth was like the moon, what would happen was one side would get really, really hot, and it would cook, and the other side would be frozen. It would be the temperature of space, and it would just spend that whole time like that, and there would be no life. There would be no chance of life. Because of the atmosphere, what happens is when the sun hits the Earth, some of the heat that hits the Earth is soaked up by gases called greenhouse gases. And as the Earth turns, these gases hold on to that heat and they spread around, and we get this thing called this Goldilocks effect of not too hot and not too cold. Now, if there weren't enough of those greenhouse gases, the Earth would be frozen. And if there are too much of them, then we would have a hothouse Earth. We would have an Earth that was too hot to survive in. So the balance of that is really, really crucial. It's really important that it stays the same. The problem is that one of those greenhouse gases is called carbon dioxide. And we've been releasing a lot of carbon dioxide over the last few hundred years. So this is a log, as you can see, just a piece of wood. And nearly half of this log is carbon. And trees get their carbon from the air. They suck carbon in and they use it to make wood. They use it to make their bodies, and they release oxygen. Now, it took millions of years to make the stuff that we burn now, the coal, gas, oil, the peat, all of these things built over millions of years, built up in layers, and that's why we call them fossil fuels. And we've been releasing them into the atmosphere by burning them. And we are starting to knock that delicate system off balance, because now this protective blanket that wraps around the Earth, that's now getting thicker. It's the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases are building up in that atmosphere. And even though the sun isn't shining any hotter, the Earth is holding on to more heat. And that's why the Earth is starting to grow hotter. It's getting more energy in the atmosphere. And that also means that it has more energy for extreme weather. And we are doing this by burning all this stuff that took millions of years to make. And we are burning it within a few centuries. So we have changed our atmosphere. So why do I call my book A Short Hopeful Guide to Climate Change? Well, the reason for that is that it does show the power that we have changed our climate. And it is something that we have control over. This is because of our behavior, because of the things we're doing. Civilization was built on fossil fuels, but we are moving on now. And there are millions and millions of people around the world who are acting on this, who are acting to do something about it. For the first time, we are acting as a species for the good of our planet. And that has never happened before, and it's something I find hugely inspiring. If you want to know more about this stuff, please read my book, A Short Hopeful Guide to Climate Change. But otherwise, thanks very much for listening.